So, okay. Good evening, everybody. So today we start with questions as we have agreed, and somebody has prepared already 4 questions for me. So I will read the questions. I don't need in Chinese, I read directly in English. There are many koans, Kung An in Zen Buddhism. From my opinion, koans seem to be a one-time case with respect to the specific time, space, and for a particular audience. Meanwhile, I have read the book Qing Tao Ti Chan Xiu Ti Tu Abhidharma的理论与实践 from you. So I have got a question regarding sudden enlightenment and develop and gradual enlightenment. First, could you please explain further sudden enlightenment and gradual enlightenment? In addition, is sudden enlightenment seized in the Sat Dharma Vipralopa, which means in the age like our age when the Dharma is getting lost. Okay, this question is rather complicated. I will answer as brief as I now so you should read Sutra. It explains very clearly. All that Buddha has taught are just skillful means. So Buddha cannot teach nirvana, Buddha cannot teach directly the suchness, the Dharma body. All that Buddha can teach are the skillful means. And skillful means are many. Now, sudden enlightenment is also the skillful mean to teach what? To teach the Mahayana idea that all sentient beings have the Buddha nature. But this is also skillful means, nothing else. Because we don't have much experience in studying and practicing Buddhism, so we take things for what they are present to us. So we believe that these concepts, they correspond to reality, but they don't. The sudden enlightenment is not the sudden enlightenment, the gradual enlightenment is not a gradual enlightenment. It is just a skillful means to explain Dharma. And Dharma is dependent origination. If you have the causes, if you have the yoga, which is the cause for enlightenment, then you will become enlightened. If you don't have the cause of enlightenment, which is yoga, as far now we are talking about Vaisha, so you will not get enlightenment no matter what theory you use, sudden enlightenment, gradual enlightenment, it doesn't matter. If you don't have the causes, you will not get the effect. But you can explain the causes from the point of view of effect. You can explain the effect from the point of view of causes. There is no harm in that. So that far for the first question. If without the Wuhan pneumonia, I consider I may be able to invoke Buddha's name, Nianfo, when I approach the end of my life, may I know the time of my exit. Having said that, I got delusions. How about my old father got the Wuhan pneumonia, my mother and I were affected. That means there were real chance that my whole family would all gone probably the same time. I was so frightened at the thought that I was in a panic. In case I were facing a real fatal situation affecting not only myself but also my beloved ones, how I could apply what I have learned in classes to properly deal with the situation, how to stay calm and have chances to be born in Western Pureland with my parents. How can I gain wisdom to lead my old parents without any obstruction? Grateful if you could give me some guidance. Well, again, this is a rather complex question. The only guidance I can give you is you stay in present. It's all your fantasies about the past or about the future, what can happen, what cannot happen, what happened. And all this naturally is, from the point of view of Buddhism, your Wangxiang. You cannot realize Dharma through Wangxiang. You have to realize Dharma through direct seeing. And for this direct seeing, you need the causes and conditions. So it is very important to study the causes and conditions of direct seeing and to study how close you are to it or how far you are to it. What you feel about your parents and so on, it's natural. You will feel attachment to your parents. You feel attachment to yourself. It is okay. But make sure that you understand Buddhism. Buddhism is the teaching of going beyond suffering. And the cause of our suffering in Buddhism is our attachment. We have to see it very clearly. Now, because we all are attached, therefore we are still subjected to suffering. When we see it, we can cope with it with wisdom. When we don't see it and give rise to our fantasies, then it will not help us very much. In Mahayana Sutra, Lotus Sutra, Heart Sutra, said by Buddha, is Mahayana Sutra said by Buddha, Bodhisattva? If so, what is the realm Samadhi? What about Bhikkhu? Are they able to enter Samadhi and Dharma realities? I don't quite understand this question. If you believe that these Mahayana Sutras are taught by the Buddha, then it is very helpful because you will have faith, and the faith is the predecessor of all the virtues. So we are not historians, we not want to study whether this sutra is belong to this and this period, if it is taught by Buddha or not taught by Buddha, what are the proofs that it is taught by Buddha. Let this be the job of historians. It is also a good job. You be historian is also okay, but being historian, it does not mean you understand the Dharma. If you want to understand the Dharma, the first thing you need is faith. And the faith means you have a conviction that what the Buddha has taught is really leading you away from suffering. And this Lotus Sutra, Heart Sutra, and doesn't matter if it is taught by Buddha or the Bodhisattva. Indeed, if you understand the meaning, it will help you to reduce, if not to abandon this great burden of suffering that we sentient beings are facing in our heart else. So that is the third question. People are high pressure, are under pressure and busy in their daily life. How can we practice shamatha and vipassana during our working hours? Very simple. And I always repeat the same thing. Try to live in the present. Try to practice the mindfulness. Mindfulness is a key for understanding your present situation. Normally, we are always concerned with the past. We are always concerned with our plans for the future. We are always concerned of our past, whom we liked, whom we don't like, what we wanted, what we did not want it. Because we want it in the past, we want it now. You should understand that very clearly. If we did not want it in past, we would not want it now. And because we don't live in the present, therefore we don't understand the Dharma potential that we have. The Dharma is precisely that which surpasses the time. And to understand that there is such a thing which surpasses the time, we need faith. If we don't have faith, we will not believe that there is something beyond our time conditionings in the past, in the future, in our individual life that we are living. The method of Yogacara is to bring us to the presence of understanding the mind, because the mind is at present, in past, in future, and it is the only base of all that we experience. And it is certain that that base is always there, no matter under what conditionings we are, unless if we are conscious, we are with mind. When we are with mind, we are with the flow of our individuality, which is alive. And when we are aware of it in the present, then we will understand this was also in the past, and this will be in the future, as long as this individual conditioning is there. Okay, so these are the first 4 questions. So any other questions, please, now, before we start with the 4th lecture? Please try to think some intelligent questions which can be of use to many of us. Anyone has a question?
I would like to ask, I love my body and I alive. And so why after this lecture I need to walk from home instead of I take it home and I'm home.
I did not quite understand, sorry.
I'm not, the body is not me. And
the body is you, certainly. Why is not the you me?
Because it's focused on the mind.
The body is only there because you have the mind. If the body is not there, you don't.
Of something and then I can do it. So I think I now.
It is a mistake to think that there is only mind, means that there is no body. Body is reflected in the mind. That's all. That is a fact. You should see it very clearly. Our experience of the body is the 4 elements, and how we experience the 4 elements depends on the seeds in our mind. This is Vaishya. So don't you have a not clear idea what Vaishya means. Vaishya does not mean that there is no body. If there is no body, what Buddha did teach the dependent origination. So how can there be dependent origination without a body?
Venerable, could you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very
Yes.
well.
Could you explain how our karma is affecting our gotra?
Yes, it's very important to know. I have explained in my previous lecture, I think we all have certain anushayas, the defilements sleeping in our mind, and we all have certain positive tendencies sleeping in our mind. So our mind is like an ocean, and in the ocean we have many waves. And we have done millions of karmas in our past lives. If you believe in Buddhism, you never know which karma will come out, like you never know what wave will appear in the ocean. According to, if you study Vaishyas, the only ocean is a mind. There is no other ocean. And in this ocean appear all kinds of waves depending on our karma. So we experience a pleasant object. If you believe in Buddhism, in accordance with our past good karma, we experience unpleasant object in accordance with our previous bad karma. But all this is karma, and karma is a process of change. What change? The change of mind.
Thank you.
Our experience is the transformation of the mind according to Yogacara. And this is what we experience.
Thank you.
No other question? Nobody comes with a question. What to do? Yes.
Can I supplement on question number 3? Actually, my question is about deep concentration. It's not about I'm not have faith of what Buddha and Buddha accept. I'm thinking about whether it is up to a certain level of deep concentration. Those teachers communicate using certain language. They are communicating in the same level of deep concentration. So it appears to me that there is another platform or dimension that only those
There is not another platform. We all beings, we have only one mind. But because of different transformations, we have a different way of understanding. But this is subjective. We are all living in subjectivity. As long as we are not the Buddhas, we are all living in subjectivity. And the closer you are to the state of the Buddha, the closer you are to objectivity. Because we believe that what the Buddha has taught is the objectivity. Whether we like it or not, Buddha has explained this Dharma that he has taught is there. Whether you like it or not, it is there. Only our understanding is very limited. By understanding that your understanding is very limited, you actually start studying Dharma. Because you have faith that what the Buddha has taught is true. What we see actually is our delusion, our dream. That's why the Buddha is called awakened. We are not awakened because we live in our dreams. When we see it, we are starting practicing real Buddhism. No one else? Any question? Okay, if no question, then we can start with lecture number 4. But it is pity you have no question, because many things I have explained in lecture number 1, 2, 3. I'm not sure if you understand them. So it is quite pity. Now, what I'm going to teach, you cannot maybe understand clearly without absorbing the previous. So make sure you understand clearly what I have been teaching in lecture number 1, 2, 3. I don't make the content very complicated. I try to make it as simple as I am. And my point is also to show that actually Buddhism is one, using all kinds of skillful means, but the meaning of Buddhism is one, no matter what Buddhism you practice. The differences are based much more on the outer side of Buddhism, not on the inner side of Buddhism, which is same, which is dependent origination, which is the Four Noble Truths, and which is on the base of understanding dependent origination and Four Noble Truths, the understanding of non-existence of permanent self. And this non-existence of the permanent self is the best way to realize from the point of view of Yogacara is by understanding the mind. We are caught in the self because we don't understand the mind. Okay, so shall I start with the lecture 4? Everybody is sure he has understood the previous lectures. I may ask you question for your, if you have to do exam. I am here in the university, I have to give exam. Then I may give you question on the base of the previous papers. So be sure you understand the meanings. This is my job. Even so, I don't particularly like to give exams, and but I will have to test what you have learned. So it seems all what I have taught till now is quite clear to you. So let us continue. So we have started explaining the process of realization on the base of the 4 objects that the meditator is to experience no matter what Buddhism he practices, is to experience during his trip to awakening. We can call it a trip because it is kind of an adventure of mind as far as Yogacara is concerned. So according to Yogacara, I hope you have understood, as long as we have not attained directly the object of realization, whatever it may be, the non-created, or however you call it, in Mahayana it is called suchness. In the Theravada we call it non-created, or nirvana. Unless one has got the real experience of that, then one is, so to say, caught in images of one's mind with which one completely identifies. and take them for the self. This is what happens to most of us. We are caught in our own images, and we don't understand that these images, they are our conditioning. And all we experience is just conditioning. But we identify this conditioning with a non-existing self. But the understanding of conditioning is based precisely on the understanding of the non-self. When you understand non-self, you understand conditioning. When you understand the self, you don't understand the conditioning. This is Buddhism. We become, according to Buddhism, we become destined for realization when we understand the dependent origination. In Buddhism, in Theravada, it is said we become the Chula Sotapanna, the small enter into the stream. We enter into the stream when we understand that our world is subjective completely, not objective. We live completely in a subjective world, and we, so to say, through our ignorance, we project reality, objective reality, to our subjective vision. So we become intolerant. The job of Buddhism is based in yoga also, is to practice non-violence. It does not mean that all Buddhists are non-violent. But when we practice violence, as far as Buddhism is concerned, it means we have a distorted picture of Buddhism. The things are a little different in the Mahayana tradition, but the principle is the same. In the Mahayana tradition, the Buddha has even killed in his previous life. To save the life of 500 merchants, he has killed the captain. There is such a story. We don't find it in Theravada, but it is there. So all depends on our motivation. But the Buddha was a bodhisattva because, as far as Mahayana is concerned, because he understood the non-self. So this is the difference between Theravada and Mahayana. According to Theravada, the Buddha was still a common man until his last life. That's why he could have a wife and child and so on, as we common men do. But according to Mahayana, no, it was just to show the Dharma. And the Dharma is very difficult to understand, because as Yogacara teaches, it is not based on concepts. Concepts are only used as a means to explain the Dharma, but Dharma is not in concepts, because the concepts, they are not alive. The names are not alive, they have no characteristics. We project our reality on the names, and we give them the genuine characteristics. And this is same for all sentient beings. We are different because we have different projection on names, on concepts. So we see things in a different way. So we are attached to different things. And the karma is responsible for our variety. I am not the same like you because I have a different karma. And all beings have a different karma. Not even two mice, if you study, are exactly the same. So the karma, the variety of karma is incredible. And when you study Yogacara, this variety of karma comes from mind, of course. Nowhere else you will find these varieties than in the mind. That's why the mind has unlimited possibility of differentiation. But this differentiation is itself the transformation of the mind. This is what is to be mindful about. Now, so let us read, because we want to advance a little bit. If there are not questions, let us read. I will now do more according to the text, so that I won't confuse you and give you a chance to ask questions according to the text. The Buddhist practice necessitates a concentrated mind, because only a concentrated mind in samadhi is able to see things as they really are. This is a common principle in all schools of Buddhism. There is no exception. And not only in all schools of Buddhism, in all schools of yoga. According to Indian philosophy, not only Buddhism, the liberation is only possible in samadhi. Now, but explanation may be different, but the principle is the same. So the content of liberation is samadhi. And how to attain samadhi, there may be different explanation, but the principle is the same. As far as all schools of Indian philosophy are concerned related to yoga, and Buddhism is one of them, the samadhi is the liberation. So the liberated person, it is said, he has entered the samadhi. In Chinese, we say yuan qi. Yuan qi means entered the samadhi of reality, which is beyond worldly causes and conditioning. For this reason, the cultivation of concentration is the very backbone of the Buddhist practice, and liberation is impossible without cultivation of samadhi. In the Theravada tradition, the last cause of the Eightfold Middle Path is samadhi, and the correct samadhi is explained as 8 samapatis. That means the 4 dhyanas in the subtle forms and the 4 dhyanas in the formless. 4 rupa dhyanas, 4 arupa dhyanas. Is it clear? So they are called samapatis. Samapati means tangible, the attainment. And samadhi means tangible, the holding in equality. And attaining this holding in equality, different stages of it, it's called samapati, tangible. In the agamas, like Samyutta Nikaya, Jhana Samyutta, practice of dhyana is compared to swimming to the other shore beyond suffering. So this shore is suffering. And we all know something about suffering. That's why we study Buddhism. Buddhism has no other purpose. Now the other shore is Pi'an, is the shore without suffering. Suffering of body nobody can remove, because when we are born, we have the body, and when we have the body, we're going to die. The body is definitely decaying. The older we become, the better we can feel it. The body is decaying, and the mind bound to the body is decaying. So in order to realize Buddhism, we have to realize something which is beyond the mind, attached to the body, which is decaying. So now you are practicing the Pureland. It is also the skillful means for that, nothing else. To realize something which is beyond decay. Since the Yogacara philosophy and practice is based on a non-dual interpretation of our worldly experience, actually the non-dual experience of our experience is not the only Mahayana has it. You will find also in Theravada, in the Agamas, but the Mahayana brings it to the core of its philosophy. But you will find the same ideas in all Buddhism. The reality is only one. This experience can only be attained in a state of samadhi. So we can be non-dual in a concept, but a real non-duality, to understand the real non-duality, we have to have samadhi. That's why the Vaishya is called Yogacara. The Yogacara means the conduct of the yogi. Conduct of the yogi is samadhi. Same as the Indian tradition of yoga, no difference. If you are a yogi, you practice samadhi. If you are not a yogi, you don't practice samadhi. In this system, the dualistic understanding of our experience in the world is called illusionary fabrication, abhuta parikalpa, shi wang fen pie, abhuta parikalpa. I did not put the Chinese character here. It should be there. This is very important to understand. So this is the key for your understanding of what we are now talking about. We are living in Shi Wang Fen Pi because we believe that outside and inside is something separate. So we do not see that we are projecting our individuality on the actual reality, which is without the separation. And that reality without the separation can only be found in mind, nowhere else. So we are in the Shi Wang Fen Pi, whether we like it or not. This is our world. And when we discover that it is so, we can understand something of Yogacara, of Vaishya. If we don't discover that it is really so, then Vaishya has no really meaning for us. Vaishya is a means to discover precisely that. That neither in persons nor in things we can find something lasting essence. That lasting essence can only be found in mind. So in Theravada also you will see in the Agamas also you will see what actually the Buddha has taught is search for your true self. This is connected to the meaning of the Indian philosophy. This is what the Indian seers have taught, the Upanishads also. But the difference is that the Buddha has turned the coin, and the real sword is a non-sword. The real self is a non-self. But the non-self is also only a skillful means to realize the real self, because the non-self is also only a concept. This is very important to understand. This is Yogacara. This is Mahayana, the non-dualistic approach. But it does not mean you don't find it in Agamas. It is there, but not very a central point of its philosophy. But it becomes a central point of the Mahayana philosophy. No matter what Bodhisattva path you practice, according to what tradition, this is the very backbone of the whole of the Bodhisattva practice. The non-dualistic approach. So this dualism that we are experiencing is itself very important to understand, is itself the cause and effect. What Buddha has taught is nothing but the dependent origination, cause and effect. This cause and effect is based on, as far as Yogacara is concerned, is based on Abhuta Parikalpa, Shiwang Fenpie. Because we have Shiwang Fenpie, we are caught in the vicious circle of the cause and effect. And we can't go beyond it. Impossible. Even the Buddha can't go beyond it. All he can do is to penetrate it by wisdom. Even the Buddha is cause and effect, because he still lives in the world. But he sees very clearly the causes and effects which make his worldly existence. He understands very clearly that his backbone pain is due to what karma. In his early youth, he rejoiced at fishermen catching fish. This is small karma, nothing, but it could cause discomfort. This is explanation of the Theravada commentaries. But all we experience in the worldly life is the cause and effect. Because we are not Buddhas, we don't see it clearly. Even the Arahat still sees it only partially. Only the Buddha can see it fully. That's why he can help so many beings, because he sees them very clearly as cause and effects. So use the Yogacara, only the Buddha has fully realized Vaisha, the mind only. Even the Arahat, even the Bodhisattvas, they only can realize it partially. So this cause and effect is nothing but our subjective existence. This is Vaisha, very important to understand. So Madhyanta Vibhanga says, 因为能取以所取有因果。So the difference is between us and Buddha is the light of wisdom, which is immeasurable in Buddha, but which is just a small spark in us. Zen has some very good stories, since many of us interested in Zen, like the story of Pai Chang and the old man. Do you know this story? When Pai Chang was teaching Dharma, there was always an old man with white hair, like myself, standing at the back and never missed a single of his Dharma talks. Always there for many years. And one evening, when the Pai Chang was himself in the hall and everybody else was gone, so he approached the master and asked him, can realized man, is a realized man bound by the, or is realized man beyond the karma? And Pai Chang answered to him, the realized man penetrates the karma. When he heard it, he started crying. And then he went away, old man crying, because he was deeply touched. And then he said that before he left, in the old time, I was a practitioner in this mountain, and somebody asked me this question, and I told him the realized man is above karma. Now I understand clearly. So crying, he left, and the next day, the Pai Chang has said, you go to that cave. When you go to Pai Chang Shan, you will still find the cave. Go to that cave and burn, give this white fox you will find there, give it cremation of the bhikkhu. Very famous story. We cannot go beyond karma, not even Bodhisattva can, not even Buddha can. Create the karma. What does it say? Is it talking? Okay, so being caught in the vicious circle of dependent origination, and dependent origination is our samsara. Means being caught from this point of view of Yogacara, being caught in our Abhuta Kalipa, Parikalpa, Shi Wang Fen Pie, very important to understand. Such this illusionary fabrication, which means not less that everything we experience with the worldly mind is the whole of samsara. As you will find in Hua Yan Jing, this famous sentence, Xi Wang Fen Pie, San Jie Xin Xin Suo. San Jie means, I hope you all know, it means this world perception based on desires in which we are caught in this world, perception based on subtle forms, and the perception based on non-forms. This is the samsara. All these perceptions are within the dependent origination. As long as, of course, there is a subject and object. The true suchness nature of the mind can only be realized in the state of samadhi, with absence of an object with a definite characteristics to be grasped. Lakshana, Xiang. So how does a mental process start? By paying attention to the Xiang. Because we are attached to the Xiang, therefore we are caught in dualism. Very important to understand. And why we are attached to the Xiang? From first thing to realize is because we give name to the Xiang and identify the Xiang with a name. But the name has no characteristic. But the dependent origination has characteristics. And dependent origination is based on Xiang. For the Yogacharins, the extension of verbalization, which means prapancha, shilun, I have not found better translation than this extension of verbalization. Shilun basically means that we extend our perception based on desire. Our perception extends. We search more and more in our dualistic perception because of desire, because of grasping to the signs of the object. So this, for the Yogacharins, the extension of verbalization is the base of alaya, and alaya is the base of our individuality. We are different because we have different alaya, basic mind. So we dwell in a different world, even with different dreams, with different desires, different illusions. And with it is our subjectivity. So alaya is our subjectivity, but the seeds of objectivity are also in alaya. Very important to understand. So alaya is, in this tradition, the royal path to realization. Because all that we are and all that we become is in this alaya. Alaya means dwelling of the mind. Now the Buddha is the one who has no dwelling. This is the difference between us and between the Buddha. Buddha does not dwell in his mind. We are dwelling in our minds, therefore we are sentient beings. And each of us is different. Each of us has his own Shi Wang Fen Pie, his own dreams, his own reality, his own attachments, his own desires, his own frustrations. So when we see it, we have wisdom. When we don't see it, then we have no liberating wisdom as far as Buddhism is concerned. This verbalization is, however, based on the habit of seeing self, nature in persons and things. So when we see some sign, we put the name of it and we take it as a self-nature. This is Xuanhua. This is, I will see the same Xuanhua tomorrow. And Xuanhua is like this and nothing else. And Xuanhua is a desirable object or non-desirable object. And all kinds of differentiations will come based on our imposing the idea of self-existent nature on the Xuanhua. Because I don't see Xuanhua as a process. I don't see also myself as a process. So I will be either attached to Xuanhua or be have aversion to Xuanhua. All these reactions are our prapancha, Xi Wang Fen Pie. The verbalization is, however, based on the habit of seeing self-nature in person and thing. That is on the fabricated level of reality. We all know in Yogacara, as opposed to other schools of Buddhism, we have 3 levels of reality. But finally, they boil also to 2 levels of reality. But in the beginning, we have to see 3 levels to understand dependent origination. That our idea of dependent origination is not the actual experience of dependent origination, because it is based on the deep habit of imposing self on the reality of persons and things. We don't see them as a process, we see them as something not changing, right? So we become frustrated because the reality does not correspond to our ideas. In that sense, it is not different from the reality in the highest sense, which is also without characteristics that can be grasped. This is very important. This Bianji Xing has no characteristics that can be grasped, because the names have no characteristics that can be grasped. Names are just sounds. Sounds are produced by the wind element rubbing our earth element in the throat. So we produce the sounds and we connect these sounds with concepts. And we bring reality into these concepts as something really existing. And due to our concepts, we have a different karma because we have different concepts. The gods have their concept, the humans have their concept, the animals have their concept. Our reality is based on concepts, our dualistic reality. For the Yogacara, the extension of verbalization is the base of alaya, that is a mind in which we dwell. And this dwelling in the mind is the base for our attachments. If we don't dwell in the mind, we have no attachment. So the Buddha in Buddhism is called Anoka. Oka means house. Our house in the world is our mind and body. Because we dwell in it, we are sentient beings. You dwell in a different world because you have a different body and mind. I dwell in a different world. Everybody dwells in his own world, in his own alaya. But the Buddha finds no dwelling in the mind, no dwelling in the body. So, bye-bye samsara. Not see you tomorrow, but bye for good. No dwelling in the mind. So the alaya is turned to the wisdom of universe and nirodha, which just reflects things as they are, without imposing one's relative understanding. So when we see it clearly, we can see how far we are from Buddha state. So we will get more faith in Buddhahood. So the common thing between the reality of concepts which impose self-existence on our experience and the reality in the highest sense is that they both have no real characteristics to be grasped. This is the first realization in Yogacara. We will talk about it later. There are many realizations, step by step, in some traditions 5 and so on. In studying of Yogacara, the first very important realization is to understand that this highest reality and the dependent origination which we experience by imposing the self-existence, both have no characteristics to be grasped. That is wisdom. That is non-dual wisdom. Thus, the practice of shamatha, free from verbalization or with the penetration of the false nature of all verbalization, it is the aim of shamatha practice in the Yogacara sense. Very important to understand. We will talk about it later. And in a way, in all of Buddhism, more or less. But in Yogacara, it is explained with utmost detail, step by step. This is to be kept in mind in order to understand how the shamatha practice is explained. According to Yogacara, here I'm referring to Shen Yong Shen Jiao, the transformation of the dualistic mind to non-discriminating wisdom, Wu Fen Pie Zhi Hui. That is the aim of the path leading to cessation of alaya and thus to the state free from rebirth based on karma, and it is of two kinds. Of the disciples based on turning away from desire being the source of existence. This is very important to understand. According to Buddhism, the desire is the root of all the phenomena. Because we have desire, we see phenomena as something existing to be grasped. Now, the difference, according to Yogacara, difference between the so-called the lesser vehicle, the vehicle of Ravaka, the disciples, and the vehicle of Bodhisattvas is the vehicle of disciples emphasizes, it does not mean does not have, but emphasizes the selflessness in persons. The vehicle of bodhisattvas emphasizes the selflessness in things. This is a difference. So that is why we have explained in the last lecture the objects of knowledge of the Shravaka are limited, but the objects of knowledge of the path of Bodhisattva are unlimited. But this is also only a concept. Don't get attached to it. Of the bodhis, and then also of the bodhisattvas, based on skillful means, on practicing non-attainment, as taught in the Transcendental Wisdom Sutras. What is the skillful means of bodhisattvas? Why a bodhisattva can tolerate the suffering of samsara without turning away from the suffering? Because he practices a skillful means of non-attainment. From the very beginning, nothing can be attained. That is a true state of things. Every dharma, no matter whether body or mind, is isolated from the very beginning. This is the transcendental wisdom. This is the deeper understanding, at least so it is explained, of the dependent origination. When you understand the dependent origination, you understand that nothing except concept can be grasped. That what we grasp is not there already. We grasp the memory. We will talk about it more. Then, if we have time, we will explain the mental process as understood in Yogacara, and the mental process is understood in the Theravada or Sarvastivada. You will see very clearly. It's all based how you make the object in the mind. I have started with that. That is a secret of wisdom. So all of Mahayana, there is no exception. What Mahayana you practicing, Tibetan tradition, Chinese tradition, is based on the Transcendental Wisdom Sutras, which teach the skillful mean of non-attainment. What practice is the practice of Bodhisattva? The practice of non-attainment. In highest reality, nothing can be attained. And how you understand this highest reality? You understand that the names you impose are also cannot be attained. Their characteristics cannot be attained. They have no characteristic. And the dependent origination we experience based on names also has never arisen. It is our subjective dependent origination based on our alaya, which is based on our seeds. For the Yogacharins, the first type does not have the power to cut off all seeds in the mind and hence cannot lead to the realization of the Dharma body, to the ultimate realization. For the Bodhisattva, the ultimate realization is the Dharma body. That's why he does not turn away from samsara until he has realized the Dharma body. And the skillful means for that is non-attainment. In the highest reality, and the Mahayana tries to interpret our worldly experience from the point of view of highest reality, nothing can be really attained. It does not mean we do not practice. We practice through wisdom, not through attaining. This is transcendental wisdom. Thus, the aim of the first path is to abandon karma, while that of the second is to master it completely. No matter what path one chooses to attain liberation, one has to learn to master attention. So this is a key concept. Attention means making object in the mind. Because all mental processes start with it. According to all Buddhist traditions, the mental process starts when you pay attention to the sign of the object. But how you pay attention to the sign of the object already depends on your previous experience. This aspect is especially emphasized in the Mahayana tradition, but is inherent in the Theravada or in the so-called lesser vehicle as well. So my point is especially to emphasize the unity of all Buddhist traditions. They speak about the same thing. And the great principles of Mahayana Buddhism you can all trace back to the Agamas finally. According to Yogacara, the object of attention is already a past object because 5 consciousnesses have no continuity. Very important to understand. The 5 consciousnesses cannot last. When there is continuity in one's attention, the object is differentiated only by the mental 6 consciousness. It is the mental 6 consciousness which then brings continuity into our observation of the characteristic of the object. So what you see by eye is just the image of the color. Then the mental consciousness comes and says it is a shirt, it is this shirt, that shirt. Thus, the attention arises due to 4 powers. This you will find in Yiche Shatilun, Posati Jietsufan. The power of desire. You have to have a desire to the object, then you then you continue attention on that object. If you don't have desire for the object, the attention will go somewhere else. Of memory, that means you hold the past object in the mind. That's why you continue your interest in the present object. The power of the object itself. You hear the big noise, so the mind goes there, pays attention to it. And the power of habit. Because you have the habit of paying attention to beautiful girls, so whenever you see a beautiful girl, you immediately, your mind runs there and stays there. All of them are linked to a past object. So compare with Theravada Abhidharma, the power of Abhujita, which means Zhuan Xiang, and the power of object, Jinjie. These two define how we experience the object. Abhujita means we will talk about it maybe in the coming lessons. According to Theravada, you can experience the present object because the duration of the object is 16 times longer than the duration of the mind. In the mental process, we experience because the mind, the velocity of the mind is much faster than impermanence of the mind is much faster than the impermanence of the materiality. The Yogacara does not agree, but this is a concept, we will talk about it, which is very clear. Depends how you make the object in the mind. In the Theravada, you can only hold one object at the mind. You cannot hold second object, third object, fourth object. In Yogacara, why not? We are sitting and feel the pain. At the same time, we can feel the bliss of Samadhi. This is our experience. According to Theravada, no. Because the velocity of the mind is so fast, we don't notice that we change our attention. But we will talk about it later, otherwise you may get confused. Yogacara is a very deep study, but in Yogacara you can have several objects at the same time, even several feelings at the same time. In Theravada, not possible. In Sarvastivada, also not possible. So, since the duration of the materiality is 16 times more than the duration of the mind, so depends. If the object is very clear, then it runs 16 times. If it is not very clear, then it runs less, but the bhavanga, the impact of the object on the basic mind will last longer. And that is called abhujita. From the Sanskrit word bhuj, which means bending of the mind. So how we experience the object depends how we bend the mind to the object and on the clarity of the object. Two things together. This is to be understood to master the mind. So the practice of meditation, which must be based on continuity, arises on a past object, a concept. Very important. Later you study more about Mahayana, you study more about Theravada. You will see that Theravada emphasizes that the objects of Vipassana, of wisdom, must be the not concept, but the real objects, direct objects. When you read the Mahayana books, you will see that most of the objects of wisdom actually are the concepts. The wisdom arises on the concept, not on the ultimate reality. So according to Yogacara, even the 5 aggregates, they are also a concept. If you don't have the concept of 5 aggregates, you will not realize 5 aggregates, whether you like it or not. Because you can also talk about other aggregates. Why not make a perception different aggregate, you make a feeling different aggregate, you make the will different aggregate. Why not make a memory different aggregate? It is also a concept, but this is the best concept you can make to explain reality, but it is still a concept. So the practice of meditation, which must be based on continuity, arises on past object and a concept. In the Yogacara tradition, both the practice of shamatha and vipassana thus happens on a past object differentiated by a mental consciousness. We are stuck by mental consciousness and we can be liberated only by mental consciousness. The 5 consciousnesses cannot liberate us because they are very, very impermanent and not clear. The manas cannot liberate us because its object is the alaya consciousness. And alaya consciousness cannot liberate us because how we experience it is dependent on our mental consciousness. Following a direct experience of object by 5 senses. This is why it is called the reflected image, yin xiang. We have talked about it. First, we have to understand very clearly that object of our meditation, shamatha and vipassana, we will talk about it more, is just a reflection. Then we can understand eventually the Yogacara philosophy that all that we understand through our dualistic mind is just a reflection. So now let us make a short break. We have been talking 1 hour and a half, and then we can continue. 15 minutes break so that you can relax and try to think about what you have learned so that you get more and more clear concept and connect it with the previous. Omitobo. Hello, Yang Xianxiang. 你好吗？哎呀，我现在在自相寺，你有空请来拜访我们，嗯？
你听到吗？
可以听，
哈
非常清楚，好像你在我前面一样。
哈，谢谢你。
电脑很厉害，不过我不太会用。有导演是我可以。
我也不太可以。我都是我的同事给我安的。
我跟电脑很难成朋友，所以我都是靠别人帮我忙。
我也是，我的同事给我帮的。
好，那我们继续讲，大家在吗 ？Hello。Okay, page number 2. 因为时间很有限制，我们智慧没有限制，时间很有限制。So let us continue. So, what we experience by the mental consciousness, it is similar to what has been experienced by the 5 senses. That means it is tungfen, but not identical with it. So it is very important to understand. What we experience by mental consciousness, it is very similar to what we have experienced by visual consciousness, but it is not the same. When I see Xuanhua, what I've experienced by visual consciousness is the color. She has a beige color of the shirt, but then I experience the shirt and the pattern of the shirt and everything that is in mental consciousness. Why is the alaya consciousness and the 5 consciousnesses experiences the object spontaneously, that is without intermediation of the mental organ, manas? The mental consciousness experiences object only in a non-direct, non-spontaneous way, through the intermediation of the mental organ, manas, which brings the, so to say, our individual understanding. In the Sarvastivada, the mental organ is the immediately previous thought. In the Yogacara, the mental organ is the manas, the 7th consciousness. But in a way, when you use wisdom, there is not so much contradiction. They are interconnected. The mental organ is understood to be the immediately preceding mind in the Sarvastivada and 7th consciousness in the Yogacara. It must always happen as long as the object of liberation is not directly experienced. That means there is no manas in a supermundane mind. Chu Shin has no manas. This is explained in Cheng Wei Shirun. In the supermundane mind, the manas disappears. But when the supermundane mind is not there, the manas comes again. Because in the supermundane mind there is no woman, woe, and so on. It is only in our dualistic normal mind. So the object of the alaya consciousness that is based on the five senses, and objects of the five senses are called the near object, Qing Yuan. While the objects of the six mental consciousness, six mental consciousness are called the far objects, Shu Yuan. Very important to understand. So the five consciousnesses and the alaya, they can see the object directly, spontaneously, but the mental consciousness already through the filter. And that filter is the manas. Yet only the six mental consciousness can meditate. The others cannot, because the alaya consciousness is non-defined, avyakarita vuci. The first five consciousnesses cannot develop concentration and wisdom, and the manas consciousness cannot abandon a clinging to self as long as the alaya is not transformed into the wisdom of great mirror. We have explained that. When it happens, all the other consciousnesses become the body of Dharma. That is, become the Buddha. The Buddha in Mahayana is nothing but the body of the Dharma, Fashen. Because all the phenomena become consciousness. The non-conscious cannot become a Buddha. So this is to quote Ho Yanqing, which says, "一切皆一，无不皆一." So when you become a Buddha, everything is just one consciousness. What consciousness? The suchness. This is a secret and the depths of the mind-only philosophy and interpretation of the Buddhist practice leading to liberation from suffering. That is emptiness, suchness, or true nature of existence, which unites and equalizes everything in our experience, is based on mind. The same idea you will find also in Theravada, in fact. So how to start? shamatha meditation, the meditation of appeasement of mind, keeping the mind only in interpretation of our experience in mind. Here a yogi seizes an image which is similar but not identical with what he has experienced through the five senses, and strives to continue to stay with the same image. That is why Wu Fen Pie Xiang, learning to place his mind equally on that very image. This is how he learns the art of samadhi, which means literally samadhana. That is, adhana means placing in Sanskrit, sam means correctly and equally. So placing mind correctly, equally on the object is samadhi. Now we have worldly samadhi, placing the mind equally on the worldly object like the breath. And we have the supermundane samadhi, placing the mind equally on the supermundane object, which is emptiness, signlessness, and desirelessness. So normally first you learn the art of placing the mind on objects that can be seized in terms of characteristic like breath. When you have achieved samadhi on the breath, you can place the mind clearly on the image of the breath. Then you can turn to the mind itself. And that is the ultimate samadhi, ultimate samatha. For that purpose, he has to learn the art of neither abandoning nor clinging to the mental image he takes as the object of his meditation. Pusha puchi suoyen. This is samadhi. You do not abandon, leave the mental image, which is the object of your concentration, but you also do not hold to it. That's why your mind can be placed equally on the object. In the Theravada tradition, the same process is explained in terms of 4 kinds of cultivation, bhavana, in Patisambhidamaga, the path of discrimination, and in the path of purity, the Patisambhidamaga is quoted. So, the practicing shamatha, you have to practice anativata sankhara, which means the cultivation for the purpose of achieving neither access nor deficiency in application of the mental formations, faculties to the object, especially the 5 faculties, but also all the other mental formations, which in a healthy mind is connected always with the 5 faculties. They are predominant. The kusala chitta, the shanshin. So it means they are equal. If they are not equal, you cannot attain the samadhi. The face, if you have a strong face and it is not equaled by concentration, wisdom, effort, mindfulness, then it will only lead to excitement. If you have strong effort, not equaled by these again excitement. If you have strong concentration not equaled by the rest, mind will sink. If you have a wisdom not balanced by these two, then you will be depressed. Everything is suffering, everything is impermanent. But the mindfulness has to be always there and is never in excess. Mindfulness can never be in excess, but all the others can be in excess or can be in deficiency. If they are in excess, mind will be excited. If they are in deficiency, mind will sink. So, to cultivate samadhi means to cultivate the balance of the mental faculties, part of the powers which determine the nature of the mind. The sankharas are the powers of the mind which determine the nature of the mind. And in positive mind, the concentrated mind is a positive mind usually, unless it's a wrong concentration, we have explained. Wrong concentration is based on anger, on grasping. Right concentration is based on letting go. So practicing samadhi means practicing the balance of the forces which form the mind. These forces forming the mind, they are called the mental factors. Or mental formations. So finally, you will see they talking about the same thing, but explain it in a very different way. So that is why it's so useful to see the process of meditation from different perspectives. They are complementary. Second cultivation to be done in shamatha is indriya ekarasa, which means a cultivation to make all the faculties of one taste. That means taste of liberation. In Buddhism, the liberation is a purity of the mind. Either the purity of the worldly mind, which still has the seeds of defilements, or the purity of the supermundane mind, which transcends the seeds of defilements. But the aim of the Buddhist practice, no matter whether shamatha or vipassana, no matter whether with the non-differentiated object or with differentiated object, is the purity of the mind. So when the purity of the mind is attained, what will happen? The faculties will have one taste. Taste of purity is one taste. Impurity has many, many tastes. Purity has one taste. Tatupagavirya, the cultivation of a correct effort to achieve the one purpose of meditation, the purity of the mind. And asevana, the habitual practice of the three preceding cultivations, of the balance of faculties, of one taste, of the purity of the mind, and of effort to maintain this purity of the mind. So no matter what Buddhist practice you do, you have to keep it in mind. Now you are using the Pureland, it's the same thing. In the meditative tradition as taught nowadays in the Northern Buddhism, the same process of shamatha, of attaining appeasement of mind, which is shamatha, is usually taught in terms of 9 dwellings of the mind in shamatha, called 9 shinju. Shin means mind, ju means dwelling. So in Northern tradition, no matter whether in Chinese tradition or Tibetan tradition, when we explain shamatha, we always tend to talk about these 9 dwellings of mind in shamatha, 9 shinju. So, and this is based on Yogacara Bhumi Shastra, indeed. So you may be a Madhyamika, but you still explain shamatha based on these 9 dwellings of the mind. So the first dwelling is called Stapayate, which the Xuanzang translates as Neiju. Stapayate literally means to establish. Sta means to stand, stap to make stand. To make stand the mind. Make stand the mind where? Make stand the mind on the meditation object. So when you make mind stand on the meditation object, you make it Neijuan. Otherwise, the mind is always outside, right? That is monkey mind. So the first step to subdue the monkey mind is to make the mind Juan, Neijuan on the meditation object. That's why Xuanzang has translated this establish the mind in itself. He translates as Neiju. It is not a literal translation, but it is good translation. Chinese difference between Chinese and Tibetan is in Chinese they prefer very often free translation. In Tibetan they translate exactly as it is. Stapayate is just Stapayate. Establish. So establish where? Establish on the meditation object. When you establish mind on the meditation object, it turns on itself. Because this reflected image comes from the mind. And in Yogacara, everything we experience is actually mostly reflected image. So this is how you start. And because you are not yet familiar with establishing mind on the meditation object, it always runs away. Monkey mind always runs away, never stays. So you have no pleasure in meditation in this first stage because the mind always running away, and you want to catch it by force, and the more you try by force, the more frustrated you become because the mind will not obey you. You want to subdue it by force, it will like a spring, it will come back. But still you have to continue, because if you don't continue, you will definitely abandon meditation and do something else. So at this stage you may still think, oh yeah, maybe I should do something else, I will be more successful. Meditation very troublesome. Mind always running away. Now the second stage is still you have not subdued this tendency of using force to bring the mind to the object, but there is a continuity. So there is a promise of the better future, because mind has some continuity on the meditation object. So it is called samstapayati, which Xianzang translates as Tengju. Teng here does not mean equal, ping teng, but teng means continuous. Teng ho. So in these two first stages, we will talk about it later, the meditator is still trying very hard to bring his mind to the mental image by force. And because he does it, he will be frustrated. But he has to do it because his wisdom has not yet ripened. Finally, all meditation is process of purification of the mind, nothing else. And purification of the mind is based on wisdom. Concentration is the most important tool of wisdom to make the mind pure. But the mind pure is the wisdom. Now, it is to be kept in mind always, as long as you try to solve things by force, you are not using much wisdom. When you have wisdom, you don't need to use much force. When you don't have wisdom, you will always want to dominate by force. Most of us, unfortunately, do like that. But when you meditate, continue meditating, you start to see that it does not work. It does not work. If somebody tells you it does not work, you will still try, because you have this habit, right, of using force. You have to experience it in the depths of your being that it does not work. Then the mindfulness starts to work. When the mindfulness starts to work, you are in the third stage, which is called Anju. Avastapayati, literally in Sanskrit, placing down. Unless you have mindfulness, the mind will be not placed down on the object. By force, you cannot place mind down on the object and keep it there. You have to have mindfulness to do it. No matter how many books you read, unless you have this experience, it will not work. You have to get this experience that it does not work. You cannot keep the mind on the same image by force. You have to keep it there by mindfulness. When there is mindfulness, you don't need the force. When there is no mindfulness, you rely on force. And because you rely on force, you will not be satisfied with what you're doing. Right? So avastapayati means you are able to place your mind down on the object and immediately notice when it leaves the object, because you have mindfulness. In the previous stages, you don't notice it. So you start your dreaming and forget the object of meditation, right? So here the situation becomes different. So you are already using a more subtle force to keep your mind on the object, and that is the mindfulness. And the function of mindfulness is concentration. because of concentration, you don't forget your object of attention. That is mindfulness. So the essence of mindfulness is wisdom, and the function is concentration. Because you are concentrated, you don't forget the object of your attention. The mindfulness literally means memory. Smriti, Nien. Now you have Nien, so you can place your mind down on the object and immediately notice when you leave the object. So you may have a lot of other thinking, you may have different sensations, but you will not leave, you will remember the object, and you will remember, aha, now the mind has left the object, so I have to bring it back. And because you discover it as soon as it happens, the mind becomes much smoother. There is a smooth quality in the mind. The smooth quality in the mind comes from mindfulness. Very important to see in daily life also. When there is no mindfulness, we react by force. And our speech is chaotic, our movements are chaotic. When there is mindfulness, our movements become smooth, our speech becomes smooth. So, why? Because we have concentration to hold the same image in the mind. Finally, the words are also images in the mind. So when this power of mindfulness has ripened, that means you don't leave the object anymore. You can purify your mind. If you're still leaving your object, then you cannot go deeply into the process of purifying the mind. And who purifies the mind? Awareness. Awareness is the same synonym as wisdom. Wisdom means awareness in Buddhism. Awareness means wisdom. The wisdom as awareness is the ability to make the object in mind by wisdom. That's why it's called samprajanya, Zhenzhi. So when the mindfulness is ripened, you don't leave the object of your meditation. Awareness comes in. As long as you leave the objects of the meditation, awareness have no clear function. So only the function of mindfulness ripens, the awareness comes in and can purify the mind. Is it clear? And mindfulness is ripened in this stage of upastapayati. Upastapayati means jinju. Jinju means your mind never leaves the vicinity of the image in your mind. It's always there. You may have thoughts, but this image will be there. You may have different sensations, image will be there. And that image will be clear because the mindfulness is ripened. So the next stage will be Dhammayati. Dhammayati means to subdue. Tiaofu. Tiaofu means to subdue. This is a literal translation as opposed to the previous ones. So Dhammayati means he enters into the process of subduing all coarse manifestations of excitement or sinking. The enemies in Buddhism, the enemies of the appeasement of the mind are the 5 nivaranas, wukai, they are called. You may have heard this expression, wukai. The first is the sensual desire. Second is aversion. Third is sloth and torpor, sinking mind. The fourth is excitement and remorse. And the fifth is doubt. Now, in this tradition, these 5 can be summarized as 2 tendencies of the mind. One is to sink, that is sloth and torpor, and the other is opposite of sinking, is going up. In Sanskrit, audatyam, up. So either mind goes up, excitement, or it goes down, sinking. So these tendencies summarize this wukai, 5 hindrances. When you have got rid of them, the mind will be correctly and equally placed on the object. So you will experience anativata sankhara, the neither excess nor deficiency of all the mental forces of the faculties. So see, everything fits together, only you have to get a very clear picture. So because we will talk about it in our next lesson, because here your mindfulness has ripened, and we have explained the function of mindfulness is concentration, and concentration has always tendency for sinking. Concentration is a deep mind, and deep mind has a tendency of sinking. The excitement is the shallow mind, and the shallow mind monkey mind has a tendency to spread, to scatter. So these 2 tendencies don't allow you to keep the mind equal and equally placed on the object in a balanced way. That is samadhi. Now, because you have already attained in the 4th stage the ability to use mindfulness, force of mindfulness in non-interrupted way. Therefore, this tendency of gross excitement, that means, what is gross excitement? Gross excitement is the excitement which leads to losing the object. Your mind starts thinking about something else and loses the object of your attention, be it breath or Pureland. You concentrate on the Buddha's name. You forget it and start thinking. You may be still repeating Namo Amitabhaya, but your mind is somewhere else. Already no more Amitabha there at all. So no more samadhi, nothing. Now, in the 4th stage, your mindfulness is ripened. You don't lose anymore the object of your, the picture of your mind. You don't lose it anymore. But because you have mindfulness, you have concentration, the mind can still think to the extent you may not lose the object, but the object will not become clear. You cannot have meditation on a non-clear object. Such a meditation is not a real meditation. It cannot bring you deep into the mind. Object has to be clear. So in the stage of Dhammayati especially, you succeed in subduing this sinking tendency of the mind, because the gross sinking tendency of the mind. That means you lose your object because your mind has sunk, and suddenly some other image which keeps your attention appears in the mind. Now when you have concentration, it's a deep mind, some other images may arise in the mind. You may have experienced, right? It is when you have concentration, then other images appear. Sometimes a very, very impressions from very, very past life, in this life, or even some objects you may not know may appear in the mind. Because when the mind is concentrated and object of your attention not clear, all kinds of images can appear in the mind. And if awareness is not there, then they may even eventually not only lead to losing your clarity of the object, but they can make you lose the object altogether, and you just follow these images. And what image appears in the mind, you never know. If it is a good image, some bodhisattva, then you may be very happy, or some divine being. If it is a very frightening object, you may become depressed. And where is your meditation? Where is your equal mind? So, first, you have to abandon completely the tendency of gross thinking and gross excitement. Then your mind comes to the sixth stage, which is a wonderful stage, Shamayati. Your mind becomes appeased. That means your tendency to thinking, your tendency to excitement becomes very subtle. So you are experiencing deep Jing'an. Deep, how do they translate? I translate Jing'an as clarity and relaxation. Sometimes they translate as pliancy, which is also a good translation. It means pliancy, it means lightness, it means softness, it means straightness. All these factors of mind are there. Call it pliancy or call it clarity and relaxation. It appears very clear in the sixth stage. So in the sixth stage, you can really enjoy meditation. And you can meditate for a long, long time, because you are not anymore bothered by any deep other impressions. So your impression of meditation object stays very clear in the mind. So you experience happiness, you experience relaxation. So the real deep meditation starts in the sixth stage. This is a stage to be experienced, to know what really shamatha means. So when you can stay in this conditioning of pliancy of mind with a clear mindful force of mindfulness and awareness, which allows you to minimize these tendencies of the mind to thinking and excitement, then your wisdom as to the process of clarifying the mind, make it clear, grows. So you learn to apply the same effort in keeping your mind appeased. So these tendencies to thinking and tendencies to excitement are completely minimized. So at this stage, you get insight that what really one-pointedness is. It is the equal effort of the mind on the object. Neither access, as we have explained, nor deficiency. So you are close to one taste of the mind, taste of clarity. Because you are close to it, then you bend the mind to the object with effort or without effort, balance, 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 until the one-pointedness is experienced. When the one-pointedness is experienced, the mind does not shake anymore. Flows smoothly on the object, without access and without deficiency. When there is a continuity in this state, so you attain samadhi. So it does not explain exactly you attain the dhyana, because later when you study the Mahayana meditation, you don't necessarily need to study these dhyanas, like in Zen tradition, Dzogchen tradition, and so on, to get the appeasement of the mind. You can turn your attention on the mind itself, which does not move. You can get into the deep, deep samadhi. So these are the 9 stages which are the base for explaining the process of working with the non-differentiated image in the mind in shamatha. Remember, according to the Yogacara philosophy, when you have a vipassana approach to meditation, you differentiate your image. We will talk about it later, in terms of its own characteristics, its common characteristics, and so on. In shamatha, you can experience impermanence, but you don't pay attention to impermanence. Because you don't pay attention to the different characteristics of the object. You want to keep the same image in the mind. The training in the appeasement of mind is to be applied in the case of disciples to 12 kinds of objects. We will talk about it in our next lesson. According to the Yogacara Bhumi, Shravaka Bhumi Yogasthana 2, Yicheti Shenwenti, it quotes Revata Sutta. Revata Sutta, Revata Jing. 很有意思，你们可以找南传的阿含经、北传的阿含经，找不到这个 Revata 经，没有办法找到。不过那个12所言是靠这个 Revata 经，没有办法找到。意思是我们现在所念的 阿含经，不一定是无着菩萨所念的阿含经。It quotes a Revata Sutra as a reference, but this sutra cannot be found neither in the Nikayas of the Theravada, Southern Buddhism, nor in the Agamas of the Northern Buddhism. So now these 5 objects for the purification of conduct, this is 5. We will explain them, which are the 5 objects of the purification of the, how to choose the object of meditation in all traditions, Southern, Northern, according to your inclination. If you are a person like many of us, if you are a person with many sensual desires and also pay attention to objects which give rise to us to sensual desires in our civilization, most of us are like that because we are being bombarded by all the media, by objects of sensual desire to increase our sensual desire, to become a good consumption in terms of, so most of us like that. So our sensual desires come from what? Come from paying attention to that which we consider to be desirable. We have a desire, passion, because we pay attention to that which we consider to be desirable. So what is, how to subdue this tendency? By paying attention to that which is non-desirable, impure objects. So the opposite of the tendency to greed is to meditate on the non-desirable object. 不净观，不净观有两种 there's 2 kinds of meditation on the non-desirable object, on the different parts of the body, 36 in Chinese tradition, 32 in Theravada tradition. That is meditation on the living body, impurity of the living body. And you have the meditation on the dead bodies, in the different parts of the decay. These are very non-desirable objects. You meditate the non-desirable object, your passion for the desirable object must be checked. So this, if you have too much aversion, too much hate, so what is the object to choose? The beautiful object, the opposite. Why we have aversion? Because we pay attention to the non-beautiful object, or what we consider non-beautiful object. Non-beautiful object very fast can become a beautiful object, and the beautiful object can become very fast a non-beautiful object. But at that moment, when we are seized by aversion, we are contemplating the non-beautiful object. And what is the most beautiful object in our heart? The love. Maitri, I will teach here. Next week starting, no? So the Maitri, Cixin Guan, that is to fight against the aversion. So the persons who are motivated by aversion must necessarily choose this object. The next object is the meditation on the breath. it comes also in all traditions. Meditation on the breath and meditation on the impure is the most common meditation. In the 6th chapter of Jisharun, Abhidharma Kosha, only these two objects are mentioned. Because more or less all the other objects connected with either aversion or like. Now breath is especially for those persons, and in fact we are all of this kind, who have too much useless thinking. Too many vitakas, tuoshin. So best object to deal with that is anapana, meditation on the breath. When you meditate on the breath, you observe long or short breaths, the thoughts go away. Now the next type, very ignorant people. So what to choose for ignorant people? Dependent origination. And the next one is the very proud people. Those who think they are very different from others. Those who believe that they are something special, much different from others, very special, standing above all others. Then on the 6 elements, all that we are composed of is only earth element, water element, fire element, wind element, space element, and consciousness element. Nothing to be proud about. So it will reduce this tendency to pride. Then there is long description of the different types of persons, but we don't need to go into that now. There are those who have few defilements and so on. Then there is also other meditation suitable for different characters. You can study the Jinjing Daolun. It has a very detailed descriptions. What meditation object is suitable. It describes 40 meditation objects, which is suitable for what character. So the next one are the 5 objects as skillful means. Now remember these 5 objects for the purification of conduct, 5 objects as a skillful means. Peculiarity of this tradition and of northern tradition, you can contemplate them either as Wu Fen Pie Yin Xiang or as Fen Pie Yin Xiang. You can use them for your shamatha meditation. You can use them for your vipassana meditation according to the circumstance, according to your need. We will talk about it later. So you can swap according to your need from the differentiated image in the mind to the non-differentiated, and from the non-differentiated to the differentiated. Of course, when the opposite of shamatha is what? Excited mind. But the samatha, according to Jieshen meeting, can be only mastered when you have removed not only the excited mind, but also the thinking mind. Similarly, what is the opposite of vipassana? The thinking mind. You cannot have vipassana if your mind is thinking. But the vipassana will be mastered when you have not only removed the thinking mind, but also the excited mind, which can easily arise with vipassana. So if your mind has tendency to excitement, then you can appease it by keeping same image in your mind. If your mind is connected with process of thinking, then you need to differentiate your object clearly. Then you can swap to the differentiate image according to your need. Is this clear? So for this reason, these 5 objects for purification of conduct and 5 objects as skillful means, they are both can be used as a differentiated image and as a non-differentiated, according to your need. Now, which are the 5 objects of skillful means? The 5 aggregates. The 18 elements, 18阶. When you see the 18 elements, they are the conditions for understanding the selflessness. When you see the elements, you don't see the self. When you see the self, you don't see the elements. And the skandhas are the base for the self. And the 12 spheres of perception are the cause for seeing the self. So these are the objects of skillful means. You add the dependent origination as a force, and based on dependent origination you have the possible and the impossible. Bhavya, abhavya. Because what is possible and what is impossible, you only understand on the base of dependent origination. And we always want to do the impossible because we don't understand the conditioning. We see the self, we don't see the conditioning. So when you understand the conditioning, you know what is possible, what is not possible. Then finally, to get the 12, the 2 objects used for the purification of the defilements. The worldly purification and the supermundane purification. How do we attain the worldly purification? On the object which can be grasped by contemplating the gross nature of the gross perception and the subtle nature of the subtle perception. So the most gross perception is the perception through the 5 senses. Because the contact of the eye, contact of the body with the elements is very gross. It's compared to the two horns of two rams fighting with each other. The contact of the mind with a mental image is much more subtle. It is like the two cotton balls rubbing with each other. So the mental mind gives us much more satisfaction than the bodily sensations. Because the mental object is much more subtle than the bodily object. Now, the mental object experienced with the mind bound to the five senses is still comparatively gross to the mental image of the mind bind to the samadhi image, subtle image. And the non-differentiated image of the formless sphere is still much more subtle than any image which can be differentiated. So this is how you go higher and higher in samadhi, by contemplating the grossness of the gross sensation and the superiority of the subtle sensation. When there is a gross sensation, it means the object is gross and the mind that differentiates the object is also gross. When there is subtle sensation, it means that the mind to which this subtle sensation belongs is more subtle, and the object it experiences is also more subtle. And so you go from low, you go to up. This is a worldly purification based on sensation. In the supermundane purification, you go beyond sensation. As long as your mind depends on sensation, you are in the worldly mind. Because you receive the object with certain grasping. Now, the supermundane purification for the disciples is based on the Four Noble Truths. So, by analyzing the Four Noble Truths in a more and more subtle way, you get higher and higher in the supermundane path, and you abandon all attachment to the worldly perception, and finally abandon the worldly perception altogether. It does not mean that the Arahat does not, or Buddha does not live in the world, but they are not subjected to clinging. So their mind remained equal all the time. As long in the worldly purification, the mind becomes equal as long as it is in samadhi. When it leaves samadhi, again the old tendencies for grasping and aversion will appear. But in the supermundane mind, for Shravakas contemplating the Four Noble Truths, these tendencies will be cut completely, step by step. So this is a difference. We should keep it in mind and make sure we understand it very clearly. Now, the training in the 9 dwellings of the mind in the process of shamatha, appeasement of mind, is to be understood in connection with 5 faults or defects to be abandoned by this training. We better, now it's almost coming to the end. I will explain it in the next session. So now let us read to the end, and in my 5th lecture I will explain these points. 5 faults or defects to be abandoned by this training, by shamatha. 8 mental formations or mental forces which enables the mind to abandon these 5 faults. They are called Pa Tuan Xing. 6 forces that enable the abandoning of faults in the process of appeasement. They are called Liu Li. 4 kinds of attention in bringing the mind to the object. They are rather yin zhuan than zhuan yin. That a yogi uses in learning to abandon all faults in the process of appeasement. 7 kinds of attention to be mastered in the process of advancing in purification of defilements, both in shamatha and vipassana practice. Other 4 kinds of attention that occur during the process of studying the shamatha and vipassana meditation. All these we will explain in the 5th lecture. These are the main aspects to be learned in the process of learning meditation, especially shamatha meditation. But they, as we will see, also apply, at least most of them, to the vipassana meditation as well. There are many others that can be mentioned, but we concentrate on the above mentioned ones first to get a clear picture of the process of appeasement. The appeasement of mind leads to pliancy of body. That means body here does not mean only literally this body. Body in Sanskrit or Pali language means has similar meaning like aggregates. It means many things together. So actually our experience of the body depends on our mental factors which determine the experience of the body, starting with sensation, perception. Very important to understand. So the body means also this physical body, but how we experience this physical body depends on our sensation, perception, on our will. So in deep meditation, already the bodily sensations go completely into the background. But still we speak of bodily sensation because these mental factors is what is meant. So the mental factors, it is important to keep in mind, very important if you want to understand meditation, how we experience our body and how we experience the outer world depends on the mental formations, which are sensation, perception, and all the other mental factors. Here the sensation and perception are the leading ones. That's why Buddha explains them as a separate aggregates. But all are meant, not only sensation and perception. In Jisharun you can find a very good explanation of that. When the pliancy of body and mind is prominent, the shamatha and vipassana aspect of the practice can be joined together. This is called yugalanada. Zhikwan Shuanshu. I have mentioned in my previous lecture. It can only happen with the detachment, samskara upeksha, singsha, which is the condition for shamatha, vipassana, and all the realizations to be experienced in the process of liberating the mind from grossness, Suzhong, and holding to the signs of objects, Qu Xiang, and thus from suffering understood in yoga as grossness. Here, Yogacara tradition is closely linked to the tradition of yoga. Patanjali Yoga Sutra. So, that much for today. And we will continue on Sunday. So please prepare some good questions. It seems you all understand. I am very surprised what has been taught before. So maybe you can still find something you have not understood clearly. So we will always start with questions and answers. And only then we will continue the lecture 5. And similarly for lecture 6 and all the removing. If there are no questions, then I will take it for granted that you have understood. But it will become much more interesting if you have questions and you discuss them. You only grow in wisdom by asking questions. If I have learned something, it is because I have asked many questions to my teacher.
Maybe they need to practice and have more practical questions.
Yeah, but still even a theory is a base for practice. We have to, for understanding, when we understand the theory, it is easy to practice well. If we don't understand the theory, it's not easy to practice well. And we are very, very likely to be misled by our Shi Wang Fen Pie. Okay. So, 回向，愿你此功德普及一切，我等一众生皆共成佛道。晚安，大家。See you on Sunday. Bye bye.